than any of that. But I've got a couple that really worked out good last year, and I've got some that didn't do anything at all.
Kevin, it's been a while since you've been out this farm, and a lot of things have changed over the years, but this is one of these core spots. We call it Savannah's Cove, named after my youngest daughter. They all have their own favorite places. And I'll be honest with you, it's been corn and bean and corn and bean, and this year we decided rip it up, break that soil compaction up, and go to a fall mix and try to get more organic matter. When you come out here, what are you seeing?
Yeah, first off, when we start doing corn and beans year after year, even though the stalks from the corn or the beans give some organic matter, when we go back with like a cereal grain, that gives you so much more organic matter, and that organic matter is important in soil. A lot of people overlook that. If you think of organic matter being a sponge to hold those nutrients too, no matter how much fertilizer we put on here, if it doesn't have something to adhere to, you're going to lose it in the soil. So going back with the fall blends in here is definitely a help. It's going to build your soil up. But the soil looks good to me. I mean, as far as the color and the depth of it, it's loose. I mean, it's broke up good, so everything looks good in here. But some soil test is the only real way to tell what's in that soil as far as nutrients.
What do you want to test in the soil test? I mean, I know the basics, you know, pH and your nitrogen and phosphorus and potash levels, but do you go beyond that?
Yeah, so when I get a soil test, I also get the micro and the macronutrients both, because everybody knows we're looking at pH, we're looking at phosphorus, we're looking at potash. That's the three main ones everybody looks at. And I like to say that I want my pH to be around 6.8 to 7. I want my phosphorus to be around 40. I want my potash to be somewhere around 400 to 600, and that's going to seem extremely high for most people. But as a food plotter, I want to make sure that my plants never have any signs of any suffering from fertilizer nutrients. The other things we look for is boron, magnesium, zinc, things like that. And those are some of the micronutrients that the deer need them. For antler growth, we know that it's magnesium and zinc at a 4-to-1 ratio for antler growth.
Okay.
So if our soil doesn't have the correct numbers in there, we can't get it into the plants, and we can't get it into the animals through the digestive system.
Well, you know, living in Illinois like I do, the challenge is we can't supplemental feed, we can't put mineral out here, and these deer are lacking nutrients that Mother Nature doesn't provide.
Yeah.
So the way I am looking at this is, okay, I have 2 acres right here. What can I do to supercharge the nutrition to give them what they're missing? But I guess it really starts with the test to determine what they're missing, to determine how to put that back in the plants then.
Yeah, once we get the test, but people would be amazed if they knew an accurate test and the right implementation of either organic matter back in the soil or the amount of fertilizers you're putting in, how much that can help over a 2 or 3 year period. So when we're looking at soil health, I usually tell people it's about a 5-year deal if it's a poor soil to get it built up where it needs to be, but your animals really benefit from that in the long haul.
Well, and we're not dealing with the best conditions here anyway. It's not like the big ag field that's out here where, you know, we have 300 big acres, good quality soil. We have all this competition, right, from all of these trees and the root structure, which makes it a great place to hunt. Right. But to feed the deer, so you're always balancing, how do I hunt it, how do I feed it, because I can't afford to retire a big ag field. Right. I need that for income, but I can retire this. But you're saying I still have a 4 or 5 year commitment then before
on most fields to build the soil up. But the thing I do like is how you have a buffer or barrier around the edge, because a lot of people do their plots all the way to the edge. We're not going to get much growth from the trees, just from the shade, from the moisture they draw away, but the nutrients are going to be sucked to those trees as well. So by doing the food source out here and leaving those edges is always a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've learned over the years. It makes a great raceway for the deer. Right, because then they can make their rubs and the scrapes, and they have a natural edge to follow, you know, in the event that this is a big row crop or something. But I've changed my strategy over the years. I mean, we've talked about, you know, different types of beans and different corn plants and things like that the deer would love, but I'm moving more towards the fall blends, right? Because you don't have to use so many chemicals, and you can put a mix of plants in there that they'll eat over different times of the year, so I can be bow hunting in early October, finish up my season in late January, and the plot's still viable. Yeah,
and that's slowly evolved. If you see the farming industry being a billion-dollar industry, and look at the cover crops they're doing now, where 5-10 years ago they weren't doing that. So now they see that by putting a cover crop, and for us it's our fall plots, our cereal grains and brassicas, we're using those products in here. We're building the soil up, plus we're putting organic soil matter back in the soil. So the farmers are doing it, and we're doing it as well, but we always have been. But that good rotation of putting some of that in there in the fall instead of just the corn and beans every year.
So in March, Kevin, we came in, and as you can tell, all this is relatively new. We hinge cut, we opened up a lot of this canopy for the sunlight to come down.
Yep.
And the reason being is you can look through these woods for 200 yards during the winter, and the deer did not want to be here, so they passed through here and they just kept going on to the neighbors. So the thought process is to reshape this habitat, give them food, give them thermal cover, give them bedding. But now that you're in here and seeing this growth, do we do a good job?
Yeah, it's good. And the thing I see about hinge cutting is we're looking at the instant growth from this spring, but if you look down at the very floor of the woods here, we see a lot of small plants that are just a few inches tall that are be coming on later. And we can see right here with this plant where there's a lot of browse that have actually been eating some of the ends of these already. So we've created browse right here, plus we've created a good bedding, good thick cover here, and that's what hinge cutting's meant for. The problem is a lot of guys fire up a saw and they go through the whole woods.
Right.
You know, and they do more harm than good because they created a whole area like that, where this is like a nice open area right here. It's got good thick cover, you've got a lot of browse coming in. The only other thing that I'm trying to do, and this is something I'm working on, is I'm using some pelletized lime and going into some of these areas and maybe putting it like closer to a stand site just to see if I can enhance the growth of those plants, because in the woods usually the soil is low in pH. So pelletized lime, that's something I'm just kind of working on as a test. There's really no conclusion on what it's going to do, but my thought process is just like the soils in the field, if we can bring up those nutrients in the soil, then we can bring it up in the plants, and they'll want to eat closer to the tree stand sites.
I'm excited. It's the first time I've been back here since we cut everything down. I mean, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
This is a labor of love, and you got to be patient, strategic. You saw the one stand location, you know, we had out there on the edge of the hinge cutting, so we left a little bit of a barrier, travel corridor. The deer like to come through this ridge. You got those couple cedars right there and wrap it around. But this is also sanctuary, except for shed hunting. We're staying out. We're going to play the edges. If it's a west wind, we're going to be over there. The south wind, we have a north set over here, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right, tiptoe in, tiptoe out, and probably come winter time, we're done.
Yeah.
Let them have it, push out, you know, to our food plots out on the big ag fields.
When you're really going to see what you did here is in 2 years from now, when you come in here, and even in the late winter when all this is grown up and thick, and it really improves this area. So,
but it is good to see that they're in here browsing, they're in here utilizing this. I mean, this is good. I mean, there's not a lot of silver bullets out there, but I would say hinge cutting, right, is almost the most important thing you can do on a piece of property.
I use it for cover and for food, but also I use it to, if I needed to somehow move the animal closer or farther away from a tree stand site, I might knock down just a few trees. So if I'm trying to get their travel pattern changed just a little bit, that's what I use it for. But
shape their pattern at the same time. And if you look at what we cut, it's low value shagbark, hickory, right? I mean, it's ironwood. I mean, exactly. There's not. I mean, we left the good oaks in here, which they're going to just produce more mast, right? So I'm excited. I mean, I'll be honest with you. We put 3 days in here. I'm like, this is all we cut in 3 days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's back-breaking work, but we did this piece. So there's 3 fingers. And so the idea is each of 3 years we're going to take 1 finger.
Yep.
So we have layers of growth in here. But I'm pretty excited about this, and there's a couple good deer that live back here, so I might be in that stand in the peak of the rut. So one of the projects that I've been working on the last couple of years is trying to put a water source next to my food source. Now in my head that makes sense, right? Food, cover, water.
Yep.
Do you think water is really as important as food and cover?
I think sometimes it's more important. The thing I'm trying to look into is what makes one water source better than the other. So if this is the only one located close to here, yeah, they're going to hit it. But if we have a shallow, muddy, little light or very shallow water hole and the deer are hitting it more, I'm wondering about the nutrients in the water. So in this pond, it's got a lot of cover on it, so I can see where the temperature would be cooler because it's not just exposed in the sun, it's not going to be warmer water. So I'm just kind of studying and looking at some things, but over the years I've noticed this, and other guys may have too, but you look at a water hole, why do deer hit certain water holes and not other ones? So what the testing I'm going to do this year is pulling water samples and sending them in and see if there's a mineral content to that water. see what the temperature of that water is and see whether deer are hitting it.
I mean, that makes sense. The water's a double-edged sword, right? Because we're all afraid of EHD.
Yeah.
So when we shaped this pond, we didn't make it very big. We made steeper banks, right? If you see here, more sandy, type soil, right? We don't have a lot of muck. We keep it cleaned up. And then, of course, you see we mow around this, and then we spray.
Yep.
So the idea is we don't give the place for midge to live. And my belief is that if the deer don't feel that they're around the flies and the ticks and things like that, they can then come to the water source more conveniently. Then obviously they're going to come out into our fields here and eat the beans and hide in the corn. And I'm like you. I think water's important. What makes one source better than another, I don't know, but this seems like a healthy pond to me.
Yeah, and it's right located to where I like the high bank on that side because, like you said, I think the last time I was here we talked about that because we were a couple years off of a bad EHD kill was these steeper banks, like you said, keeps the midge from having a place to lay and be. But the good steep banks, and then you got browse cover around it. And the thing I like about this good cover in here actually gives you colder water temperature. So when it's hot and they're needing water, they can come this side and get a drink and go right to the food source.
Well, and now we're taking this model and like we put another one on the north side of this field. This is a big field that has a lot of deer because we don't want to congregate the deer.
Right.
So in our mind, when we lay things out, if we have 50 deer in the field, how can I subdivide those deer, right? Yeah. How can I have 25 and 25? Okay, well, if I divide my water sources, divide my food sources, do my habitat improvement, basically try to change the communities. And then you have the buck that owns this community and the buck that owns this community. So at the end of the day, it's how many mature bucks can one property hold. And some properties, it may take 500 acres. And on this property, it only takes 100.
Yeah.
But it's 100 quality acres.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how big a piece you have. If you manage it well enough, they truly will spend the majority of their time there. Now, if you have an 80, they're not going to live their whole life there.
Yeah.
Right? But the majority of the time they're going to spend there.
Right. But the other thing I do like about this, and most of the time when I'm digging a water hole, is I'm trying to put it right back next to the edge of the timber so they don't have to come out far for water. But also, like I say, the shade, I think the temperature has something to do with some of that, but I also think there might be a mineral content in it. But like you say, the more of these you can have, the more areas they can go to. And then if we do have another EHD outbreak, hopefully this helps you to where it's not all congregated in one area.
So when you're working with your landowners and you're thinking water source with food and...
Yes, and normally on a farm, I'm looking at least a water source on every 40 acres, maybe even more than that, depending on how it sets up. And even if we have a creek or a big pond, if the deer aren't naturally watering in them a lot, put a little water hole in, and it's amazing how much they'll hit that little isolated water hole versus a big lake or a stream or a creek.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, hey, we still have about another hour of daylight. I say we go try to find some velvet whitetails.
That sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
The success on this farm or any other farm can hinge greatly by the success of the food plot. However, that's just one key ingredient. If you're looking for help on your farm, consistently holding deer and seeing deer more often, then look us up on Facebook, Instagram, or go to www.elitelandconsulting.com.